Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. Today, I'm going to share with you 5 mistakes that are preventing you from getting your first shipping client as a freight broker or freight agent. These are mistakes that I see all the time. Some of the most common mistakes I see, the most common freight broker sales mistakes that I see that are preventing you from getting your first shipper. And this is after I've personally trained over 1,000 clients in my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator coaching program. So these are my observations. These are 5 of the most common mistakes that I see that are killing your efforts to get your first shipper, to land your first shipper, start moving your first loads, and start making some money as a new freight broker or freight agent. Okay, so that's what we're going to go over today. Thank you so much for joining me. Hit me up in the comments with the city and state you're logging in from. I'd love to do some shout outs. So here's the agenda. Okay, here's what's going to do. We're going to do some shout outs. I'm not sure if we're going to do a giveaway. Probably not. Then we'll go into the live training. I'll talk about those mistakes that I talked about. And then at the end, we're going to do live Q&A. Okay, so we'll do live Q&A at the end. If you have questions about today's training or about freight broker startup or about freight broker sales or anything to do with starting or growing a successful freight brokerage or freight agency, stick around to the end because you can do live Q&A and I'll answer any questions that you have. I'll do my absolute best to try to point you in the right direction and get you moving along. Okay, so that's where we're at. This is my weekly Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. Excuse me, if you're excited to be here, hit the like button. If you've ever been here before and you found value, hit the like button. No matter where you're at, hit the freaking like button. It costs you absolutely nothing. And it helps promote and let people know that we're here for doing these free trainings every Monday at noon. So I'm going to do some quick shout outs and then we're going to jump into it. Carl from Bethlehem, Georgia, welcome. We got Scott from Plymouth Meetings, Pennsylvania. We got Kennick Transportation from Nebraska. We've got Carlos from North Carolina. Renee from Rochester, as always. Corey, as always, from Billings, Montana. We got Brian Daniels from Independence, Oregon. Carlos from Rocky Mountain, North Carolina. Akpasonia from Ontario, Canada. Welcome. Anderson from Mississippi. Anderson Donaldson from Mississippi. RJ Roa from Des Moines, Iowa. Man, Alexander from Chi-Town, from Chicago. Devin from Markham, Illinois. So we got people from all over the place. That's exciting. Thank you for joining me live. We're going to let a few more people get live. I did send the email notification out for this live a little bit late. I was running a little bit late today. But I do appreciate you guys being here. If you're catching this on replay, hit me up in the comments with hashtag replay. I love to hear from my replay folks. And if there's anybody new in the audience, this is your first Freight Broker Bootcamp Live, let me know in the comments. I'd love to know who you are. I'd love to hear from you. And again, today we're going to talk about 5 mistakes that are stopping you from getting your first shipping client. That's what we're going to focus in on today. So we're going to let a few people get live and then we'll get this show on the road. We got Anisha from Palestine, Indiana. Welcome. We got people from all over. I love it. Thank you so much. We stream this, just so you know, on YouTube, Facebook, and on LinkedIn. So some of you guys are joining me. I mean, I'd say the majority of the people either are catching this on YouTube or LinkedIn. Facebook seems to be on the downslide. I'm not sure why, as far as like overall people participating, but you know, I would say that probably less than 10 or 15% of the people that watch my lives watch them from Facebook. Most of them watch them from YouTube and a growing audience on LinkedIn. So thank you for that, everybody who's checking it out on YouTube or LinkedIn. So that's where we're at. These are my notes we're going to go over. I just summarized some of the key points, and then I'm going to do a little bit of talking on each one. So we're going to give it about another 30 seconds, and then we'll get this show on the road. Again, today is about freight broker sales, right? We're going to focus in on some common sales mistakes that I've noticed after training over 1,000 students. All right, 1,000 clients. This is my private coaching program, which is my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator. Matter of fact, before we get started, if any of you are struggling with freight broker sales, if you're struggling with how to get shippers, if you're struggling with that whole process of cold calling and cold email and overcoming objections and that whole sales system that you need in order to predictably be able to get shippers, and you're not on my wait list, check out freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. It tells you a little bit about the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program. You can get on the wait list for free. The program is not free. The program is not cheap, but you get a huge ROI on your investment with just one small shipper. Okay. So ultimately, that's where it's an 8-week live coaching program where I take that piece of my brain, I transplant it into your head, and I help you not only learn my system, but help you implement it in your business and hopefully start generating cash flow before you actually graduate from the program 8 weeks later. So if you want to get on the wait list, check it out. Again, it's sold out right now, but you can get on the wait list. Spots open up periodically. And then what you would end up doing is we'd end up doing a quick call with either me or someone on my team to try to do a quick interview and make sure that we're both a good fit for that type of a program. Okay. So get on the wait list. All right. If you're not on the wait list yet, get on the wait list. It's absolutely free. And there is some specific details about the program there in a quick intro video that I show. All right. So we got a bunch of people. Awesome. All right. Very good. All right. Let's jump into this here. All right. Let me remove that banner. Review my notes super quick. If I can see them. Going to need some reading glasses soon, it appears. Okay, cool. Got it. So here we go. After training over 1,000 freight brokers in my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program, my coaching program, I'm going to share with you five mistakes stopping you from getting your first shipping client. These are mistakes that I see, recurring and common mistakes that I see new and even established freight brokers making when it comes to trying to get clients. All right. So I'm going to share with you. Here's my notes. I'm going to share this with you today. We're going to walk through this. And then at the end, we're going to do live Q&A. Okay. So here we go. Number one on the list. And this is one that drives me absolutely crazy. They're using outdated, old school, generic sales scripts in order to try to get shippers. I've talked about this before. I can't talk about it enough. There are several old school, outdated sales scripts that shippers have heard hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. And what happens is when they recognize that pattern, when they hear that script, it automatically triggers a negative response. And so therefore, you never get an opportunity to build rapport. You never get an opportunity to ask any questions. You never get an opportunity to find any need. And therefore, those calls end very quickly, typically in the first 30 to 60 seconds of the call. You're being dismissed or you're being hit over the head with these objections. And you're never able to get to the next stage, which is the most important component in order to move that sale forward. Okay. So the 3 scripts that I hear all the time. Hey, we've got trucks in your area all the time. I thought we might be able to move some of your loads, or some facsimile of that. You've probably heard it before. It's been around for 20, 30 years or more. Okay. It was around before I became a freight broker back in 2003. And it was bad then. It's only worse now. Number 2, hey, we're a freight broker. We can save you some money on your freight. The problem with that is everybody says that, and now you've painted yourself in a corner, and you've got to be the cheapest. If you're not the cheapest, you're not going to get the business. That's a no-win game. And then number 3 is, hey, we've got a network of over X amount of trucks, 1,000 trucks or 5,000 trucks or 10,000 trucks, whatever they say. You know, we've got a network of lots of trucks, and we'd like to help you move your freight. Those 3 pitches, those 3 cold call scripts, those 3 entries and cold outreach strategies are outdated, and you have to stop using them. Okay. I promise you, all you're doing is, luck and hope are not winning strategies. You've got to have a real system. You've got to understand how to get your prospects' attention. You need to learn how to gather sales intelligence to create a compelling sales hook. You need to understand, your specific niche, and you need to understand how to create a compelling sales hook in order to get your prospects' attention. Because the first 5 seconds of that call is the most important. If you don't differentiate yourself in those first 5 to 10 seconds, there's a high probability you're going to start getting some rejection right away. Okay. So number 1, they're using generic scripts. They don't understand how to create a compelling sales hook. All right. That's number 1. Number 2, this is a huge one. They talk too fast, or they talk too much, or both. Okay. So a lot of people that are new in freight broker sales have a tendency to talk too fast. Okay. And what happens is when you talk too fast, here's what you have to remember. A confused mind makes no decision, or it becomes a negative decision. So for example, if you talk real fast, you get on the phone and you talk real fast and they don't understand you, all of a sudden their default answer is going to be no. Confusion creates negative outcomes. So you don't want to confuse them, particularly at the very beginning, at any time during the sales process, but at the very beginning, when you're just building some momentum, they have to understand you. So talking too fast is a very common problem, especially when it comes to your cold call opening. All right. And then talking too much, right? When you dominate the conversation, when you're talking 80% of the time, right, and your prospect is giving you one word responses or one word answers back, that's a surefire way to fail, right? So you need to start a real dialogue. You need to have a two-way conversation. You need to understand how to ask good questions, pause, and look for that positive feedback or negative feedback so that you can then adjust your strategy and start moving that sale forward, right? So talking too fast and talking too much is another huge mistake. Number one, you need to slow down. Number two, you need to learn how to ask good questions that starts a dialogue, right? All right, so listen, that's number two. But I want you to stick around. Make sure you stick around for number five, because this is an absolute critical one. These are all important, but if you don't get past number five, you're never going to get out of the gates and you're sure to fail as a freight broker or freight agent. So stick around for number five. All right, number three, they don't practice cold calling or overcoming objections. They think that they can just get on the phone and ad lib, or they think that they can just pull some generic script offline and then read it off a piece of paper. You can't do that, people. Here's the reality. You need to practice your cold calls. You need to practice overcoming objections. And the two best ways to do that are my favorite is role playing with a friend or a colleague or a spouse or somebody, your partner, whoever it is, role playing back and forth on your cold call opening and role playing how to overcome the most common sales objections. If the more role playing you do, the more confidence and competence you will have when you start making those live sales calls. That's my favorite way to do it, role playing. Number two is you need to record yourself. Now, I would record the role-playing sessions, but even if I couldn't role play, I would record myself doing my cold call openings. I would record myself overcoming these objections, and I would listen to myself, because trust me when I tell you, when I do these lives and I record these, and then I go back and I listen to them later, things seem very, very different, and they will with your sales calls as well. And so what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to critique yourself. Maybe you're talking a little too fast. Maybe you're talking a little too slow. Maybe you're not putting pauses in there. Maybe you're not fully understanding, or following the frameworks for overcoming those common sales objections, right? So that's a huge one, right? They don't practice their cold call and they don't practice overcoming sales objections, right? Number four, they don't know how to disarm the prospect that just gave them some friction, that just gave them some sort of objection, right? So there's objection handling, and a big part of that is learning how to disarm your prospect, right? So for example, you call up a prospect, hey, Joe, we've got trucks in your area, the old negative response. Hey, I was wondering if we might be able to move some of your freight. And they automatically say, hey, listen, we're happy with our current provider. So what happens is the sales rep will then pretty much tuck their tail and say, oh, sorry about that. And then they'll just hang up, right? That's a very common theme that you'll see when you get an early objection. But what you have to understand is you need to understand how to disarm your prospect, right? And my favorite way to do that is simply this, right? And and actually, I'm going to give you a link where you can download a script that'll actually walk you through this. But this is how to overcome your sales objections, which is disarming. And the script is really simple. It's something like, Joe, I'm not sure I can even help you. So first, please understand that I'm not here to try to replace your current broker or your current carriers. That's not why I made the call. But I might be able to help identify some gaps where we would be able to help you. So now is obviously not a good time. You're very busy, but would you be opposed to scheduling a quick call? And so now see what I've done with that disarming? What I've done is if they've been working with a broker or a carrier for 5 or 10 or 15 years, and that's sometimes the case, they become very protective of that relationship. And so sometimes when they think you're trying to come in and unseat the incumbent that's been there for years and that they're loyal to, that creates friction, right? That creates a negative friction inside the sale. So you need to learn how to disarm them, okay? And if you guys want that disarming script and you want to learn how to do that, all you got to do is go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/secret, right? Secrets. I think it's secret, right? Let me just take a quick look at it. Yeah, freightbrokerbootcamp.com/secret. You can actually download that entire script, all right? So that's number 4. They don't understand how to disarm their prospect, right? And then number 5, last but not least, and this is the one that gets in a lot of people's way, especially when you're talking about freight broker startups, freight agency startups, and people that are struggling to just get their first shipper. And that is fear. Fear holds them back from and causes them to fail because they don't tell their story to enough people. Meaning, what'll happen is this. They'll come in, they'll make a handful of calls, they'll get some rejection, and then that rejection, right, causes them to clam up, and then they fail to take enough action. They fail to tell their story and reach out to enough people in order to allow the numbers to start working in their favor. Now, what is the fear of? The number one fear is the fear of failure, okay? The fear of failure is very common in sales, whether you're a W-2 or whether you're independent or an entrepreneur, whatever it is, the fear of failure is real. I don't care if it's sales or otherwise, right? People don't want to fail. But what you have to understand as an entrepreneur in particular, and in the sales role as an entrepreneur, right, as a freight broker or freight agent, what you have to understand is that failing is a requirement. You are going to fail. You're going to fail frequently and you're going to fail often. But it's not but that's not the final destination. What you have to understand is that you're here, success is here, and in order to get from where you are now to success, you've got to go through that failure. You've got to have those failures. It's not, the final destination, but the fact is it's actually part of the road that you're going to have to travel, and you've got to embrace that. So you got to understand and learn how to embrace those mini failures, right? And just because someone told you no, number one, that doesn't mean it's no forever. And number two, that's not the end of the game. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of companies out there that you can reach out to. And the fact is, in order to build a 7-figure income as a freight broker, freight agent, you really only need about 5 or 10 clients that are loyal to you. And I'm not talking about big clients. I'm talking about small to medium-sized clients, and you're earning a 6-figure income. So that fear of failure is a big one. The other one is the fear of what people might say, right? The fear of what somebody might say, particularly, family and friends, or maybe it's the prospect themselves, right? You've got the fear of what somebody might say, right? So that will hold people back. And that's part of that fear equation. And that's why I listed it as number 5. Now, there are tons of other sales mistakes that people make. And there are tons of other things that we cover in the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program that I've been talking about. Again, we've trained over 1,000 students through that program, and we've had some amazing success stories. We've got some insane feedback from all of our students. And so if you guys want to get on the wait list for that Freight Broker Sales Accelerator, just go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. Okay. That is the 8-week live coaching program where I personally coach and mentor you. I take that piece of my brain, everything I know about my freight broker sales system that allowed me to do over $200 million as a freight broker. I transplant it into your head. I teach you that system. I help you implement it inside your business. And then by the end of those 8 weeks, the goal is for you to start doing business with your first shippers. And that's the secret to the whole deal, right? Is that it's coaching. It's not just an online course. It's not just a video, but I'm actually coaching and mentoring you. And again, that program is sold out right now, but you got to get on the wait list, because if you get on the wait list, you'll be notified the next time spots open up. And when spots open up, they fill up fast. And so get on that wait list. It's not a free program. It's not a cheap program, but you'll get a huge ROI if you follow my system and let me coach you through the early success as a freight broker or freight agent when it comes to getting shippers. Okay. So that's today training. Listen, make sure you get on the wait list. And if you enjoyed this video, if you found any value at all, hit the like button. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into live Q&A so you can start asking questions in just a minute. Thank you guys for joining me. Appreciate you being here. Make sure you set a reminder on your phone. Every Monday at noon, I do these Freight Broker Bootcamp lives. We'll see you next week on the next live. Okay, cool. So if you guys have questions, hold your questions for now. Just give me 1 minute. Hold your questions for now. All right. Oh, we got Cynthia from Maryland joined us a little bit late. And we got Tasha from where? Love the hoodie. Oh, yes. The hoodie is a prereq during the winter. My office gets cold sometimes. The rest of the house is like 70 degrees, but sometimes my office is a little chilly. So I've been throwing this hoodie on a little bit. So, all right. So here's what we're going to do, guys. Before we jump into Q&A, do me a favor. Let me know. I'm looking for some feedback. Which of the 5 common sales mistakes, right, preventing you from getting your first shipper, can you relate to the most? Which one do you think is the most important? Which one is impacting you? Which one is having the biggest impact on you, or you think would have the biggest impact if we were able to fix that or correct that issue, would have the biggest positive impact on helping you get your first shippers, right? And hit your first 7 figures in sales. Hit me up in the comments and let me know some feedback on that, right? There was 5 of them. Using the generic sales script, talking too much or talking too fast. The other one was not practicing your cold call script or overcoming objections. You don't know how to disarm your prospect, which is critically important. And then the last one is fear of failure, fear of what people might think or say, right? So hit me up. Tell me in the comments before we jump into the Q&A, tell me which one you think is impacting you, or you think is the most critical to helping you get your first shippers. And I forgot to grab my water, so I'm a little dry here, but I'm looking for some feedback, guys. Come on, hit me up in the comments. And then if I get once I get some feedback from you guys, because I need to understand this in order for me to be able to make sure I'm hitting the mark and giving you the right feedback, the right training, and then we'll jump into Q&A, but hold your questions for now. Okay. John says slowing down, meaning you're talking too fast. Okay. Yes, for sure. Renee thinks disarming your prospects, learning how to disarm them. Yes, that's very important that you understand that. Disarming your prospect is probably going to be a part of if you don't understand how to do that, you're going to miss the mark 90+% of the time in these calls. Okay. Because you have to learn how to disarm that disarming script. Again, if you guys want that disarming script, let me see if I can find it here. Here it is right here. Go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/secret. That is the actual disarming script that I shared with you. Okay. So you can download that. All right. What else we got? Brian says mindset, struggling with number 5. Yep. Very common, buddy. Andy, not drier than my customer base. Oh, I'm not quite sure I understand that. Slowing down when I talk. Yes, Scott. Yep. Okay. Good feedback. All right. Perfect. All right. Very good. So listen, let's jump into live Q&A. If you guys have questions about freight broker startup or freight broker sales or how to get shippers, anything about starting or growing a highly successful freight broker, freight agency business, feel free to hit me up in the comments. I'll try to give you the answers, best answers I have based on my real life experience. If I don't have those answers, I apologize. I'll try to point you in the right direction. Here's the reality. I probably will not get to everybody's question today because I usually can't. But with the time allotted, I'll get to as many as I can. All right, cool. So here we are. Let's see. Anisha says, the one where you got trucks in the area and clients no longer relate to it. Yes. Okay. So you're using that old school script. Yep. Generic sales script. Yep. Good feedback. All right, cool. So who's got questions? Who has questions about either today's training or a past training or anything that's on your mind about starting and growing a successful freight broker, freight agency business? Talk to me. Hit me up in the comments. And in the meantime, if you're not on the wait list, if you're in my Freight Broker Bootcamp online training program and you've already started going through that and you've committed, you're like, hey, I'm going to become a broker, I'm going to become an agent, and you're not on my wait list for the Freight Broker Bootcamp, for the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator, you're absolutely crazy. If you're not a part of my Freight Broker Bootcamp and you're already a broker or an agent and you're not on there, you're absolutely crazy. Now, if you're literally just thinking about getting started as a freight broker or freight agent, you haven't really quite committed, you're not quite sure what you got to do, you're not going to want to be on the wait list. What you're going to want to do is you're just going to want to go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com. That is my freight broker startup training program where I've trained over 10,000 students through that program. And we offer a 60-day, 100% unconditional money back guarantee. That's the startup program. That's an online course. It's not a coaching program. It's an online self-paced course where you can go through A to Z and learn exact steps that you need to take in order to become a freight broker or a freight agent and start making money. Okay. So that's that startup program. But again, that's not the wait list. Okay. That's where you would go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com if you're looking for startup training. Okay. All right. So we finally got some questions coming in. Okay. Anisha says, I'm an Indian dentist, and while I face my own set of challenges, it's not that clients aren't responding. I do get business. However, there are times when I feel like I'm not able to connect or relate as much as I would like to, especially when clients might relate more to a white freight broker. What do you think about this? Do you have any advice on how I improve in this area? Okay. So I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to be upfront with you. There are always going to be people that, here's how it works. People do business with people that they like. Now, it's impossible for everybody to like you. There are people watching this video right now or that have watched my past videos that don't like me. Okay? So the reality is, it's not about getting everybody to like you because that's an impossible feat. You're never going to get everybody to like you. Here's what you have to understand. Here's how it works. People do business with they know, like, and trust in that order. So first they got to get to know you. That's where you build a little bit of rapport. Building rapport is a part of understanding your buyer persona, understanding their industry, understanding their challenges. So the more you understand that, the more you will be able to relate to them and the more they will be able to relate to you. Okay. The other component of that is on a personal level, right? If you can find things that they're interested in and get them to talk about them. For example, I've talked about this before. If you called me up or sent me an email about the last UFC fight and how you watched this or what my thoughts were on this fight, or do I like this fighter, or if it was about wrestling or about judo, any of the passions that I have, right? Those are some of the passions that I have, or maybe hunting or fishing. If you found a common thread that was interesting to me and you could start getting me to talk about that, that's the sort of thing that builds rapport. And that has nothing to do with business, just on a personal level, right? So people do business with people they know, like, right? We talked about know, then we talked about like, getting them to like you. Liking is a function of, building rapport. And then the other component liking is where they believe that you are intelligent, that you're smart, that you understand and that maybe you're kind of an expert in your niche, right? So know, like, and then trust comes down to, again, where you're able to satisfy the questions and answers they have. And then you're able to actually talk as an expert in your niche. So the more expertise you develop in your niche, the more trust you'll build. I don't think that it's as much about color, right, as it is about your ability to relate and build rapport. And so some of those things that I shared with you think are way more important than color, right? I've seen many, right, people of different races, whether you're black, brown, white, or otherwise, that are highly successful in the freight brokerage, freight agency, and trucking industry. Okay. I will tell you that the trucking industry is probably one of the most diverse industries that I've ever seen, because you have people of all nationalities, and it's a high percentage of Latinos and European and all kinds of different races. So I don't think that it's as much your race. I think that might be a kind of a limiting factor you maybe have in your mind. But I think if you focus on some of those rapport building, the know, like, and trust type of concept that I shared with you, I think that you'll be surprised. But don't be surprised if not everybody likes you. That's just the way it's going to be. Okay. Whether you're white, black, brown, or otherwise, not everybody's going to like you. And that's not your job, is to make everybody like you. Your job is to find the people that are open, right? Identifying that need and then filling that gap. And in the meantime, building that rapport and trust that it takes in order to close the sale. So I hope that helps. I went a little off on a tangent, but I hope that helps. Carlos says, what else can you say to clients when you had a truck in their area? Well, here's the problem, right? I wouldn't use that pitch at all. And here's why: because they've already heard it hundreds of times, and it automatically, okay, triggers a negative response. So I would figure out a different way to approach that client. Now, let me give you an example. There's something to differentiate here. So let's say, for example, I'm a freight broker, and I have a client, ABC Widgets, okay? And I'm moving loads for them, and I move it to a delivery location, which is another company, right? I'm moving it to another company that I've never done business with and I don't really have a relationship with. Now, if I wanted to reach out to that person at that delivery location, right, I may reference the fact that I have delivered to their location in the past and use the relationship I have with ABC widget manufacturer as a way to bridge that gap. So don't misunderstand what I call the daisy chain approach, right? Where you have a shipper and he's got 10 different delivery locations or pickup locations that are not his business, that are other businesses. And then I use that and I call those clients and do an introduction and use that relationship with ABC Widgets as the bridge to build that immediate trust, right? And then to start building that rapport and identifying their needs. So that's a little bit different, but I don't use hey, we have trucks in your area. I think I will tell you right now, I think it's one of the dumbest, it's probably the second dumbest sales pitch out there. And there's probably people that'll be pissed at me for saying that, but there's a lot of trainers on YouTube and a lot of trainers out there that will teach you that's your pitch. Hey, we got trucks in your area. Hey, wonder if we might be able to help you out. It's just so overplayed and so overdone. I just heard a trainer doing it on YouTube the other day. I just watched his video. It was crazy. That was his lead. That was what he taught. That was his best sales strategy in order to get shippers. And it kind of blows my mind because it's just lazy, right? And he doesn't know any better because that's what he was taught, right? So he's relying on luck and having to do hundreds of cold calls a day in order to build a business and get shippers, but that's really not the case. So what you want to do is you want to gather sales intelligence, you want to educate yourself about that specific niche and that specific client, and then you want to create a compelling sales hook that gets their attention and differentiates you from the crowd. And that's what I teach in the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program. I teach that entire process. I don't just teach you some one-off script. I don't just coach you on how to say this one script. What I do is I teach you my entire freight broker sales system from A to Z, right? From mindset to filling your sales funnel to following up overcoming objections, closing the sale, you know, you know, customer development and retention, referrals, how to leverage technology in order to enhance the sale. I mean, those are big components of the process. And that's what I'm doing in that Freight Broker Sales Accelerators, where I'm coaching and mentoring you on how to deploy my sales system into your business so that you can predictably get clients every month, new clients. A lot of the people that have went through this Freight Broker Sales Accelerator are getting 2 or 3 or 4 new clients every month. Okay. And the reality is this, you only need, like I said, 5 to 10 clients in order to start generating a 6-figure income as an agent or as a broker. Okay. So I hope that helps. Let's see. Scott asks, is it too late for me to become a freight agent? I'm 55 years old and need to start a new path in life. Absolutely not. No. Now, if you think you're going to retire, I can't speak. If you think this is a get rich quick, hey, I'm going to go out and make $1 million and I'm going to retire in a couple of years, then that's just the wrong thinking. Okay. But at 55, let's say you think you're going to work until you're 65 or 70, which is not uncommon, right? Because the way Social Security is and the cost of living, that gives you 10 to 15 years to build a real business, right? And I can tell you right now, I know agents. Now, this is not the norm, but I personally know agents that as an agent, they're not a broker. They work under a broker as an independent contractor. Agents that make $100,000 a month in profit in their pocket. Well, that's before taxes. $100,000 a month in commission after expenses, but before taxes. Lots of agents that do that. Now, not all agents do that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to mislead you and say that this is some get rich quick deal. But one of the agents is, this is only his fourth year in business. He's only been an agent for 4 years and he makes over $100,000 a month. He didn't have any experience before this, right? Makes over $100,000 a month. I know other guys that have been in the industry for 5 or 10 years or more that are doing the same thing. So here's what I'm trying to tell you. It's not that difficult to build a 6-figure income as a freight agent. Now, it might take you 2 or 3 years in order to do that, depending upon, your skill level, depending upon the types of training that you get involved with, depending upon the niche that you join, depending upon your motivation, depending upon a lot of factors that I can't really control. But if you want to become a freight agent, it's the cheapest way to get started moving towards a 6-figure income, because you can get between 50 and 70% of the profit on every load that you originate. Okay. So, even a small shipper that's doing one load a week, just one load a week, and you're making a couple $100 profit, that's $10,000 a year in gross profit. And if you're getting 60% of that, that means you're making $6,000 a year off one small shipper. Okay. Now imagine having 10 or 15 of those different shippers. Now all of a sudden, and that's a small one. It's not uncommon to have shippers that move loads with you every single day, let alone once a week. Right. So, and there's very little cost to become a freight agent. You can become a freight agent for a few $100, really, literally just get trained. And then you're going to need to have some internet access, which you probably already have. You're going to need a cell phone, which you probably already have. You don't need your bond. You don't need your authority. You don't need insurance. And then you're going to basically pay maybe for some load boards and a TMS once you start working under a freight broker, and you're off to the races. It's one of the fastest ways to build a 6-figure income with very little, not the fastest way. It's one of the least cost ways to do that, right? I'm not trying to promote this like it's some sort of an affiliate marketing program or some sort of, you're selling online courses, or you're going to become an influencer, or you're going to get paid on YouTube videos. That's not this type of business. This is a real business solving real problems. That there are tons of people that have been successful before you. And if you follow that model and you get a mentor and a coach and some training, that there's no reason why you can't do it as well. So I hope that helps. Whether you're 55, 35, or 65. I've had students that have went through my program that are in their 60s that started freight brokerages, not even freight agencies, and have went on to build real businesses. So yeah. And then I actually have one of my clients who was in his 60s who had retired from another industry, started his freight brokerage, and then within 3 years turned around and sold that freight brokerage. So he made all the income along the way, and then he sold it to a bigger company, and now he's retired. He's officially retired now, because not only did he have his career with his pension and retirement and all that, then he started the freight brokerage, built it up to multiple seven figures, and then sold it. So yeah, matter of fact, I just had a conversation with him, a messenger conversation with him through Facebook, probably in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So yeah, hope that helps. Okay, Andy, it was in reference to when you said you were dry because you had no water, but disregard. I do have a question. I'm currently working for a freight broker independently that pays me 20% for each load. Okay, cool. Oh, well, whoa, hold on. I currently working for a freight broker that pays me 20% for each load. Okay, so are you just doing the sales side where you're going out and getting shippers and then you're giving them to him and then he's doing everything else? Or are you actually getting the shipper, moving the loads, dispatching, finding the carriers, rating, doing all that? If you're doing all that, you're way underpaid, okay? Because you should be getting at least 50% of that. Now, if you're just doing the sales side and you're just getting them customers and then they're taking everything on the back end and you're getting a residual 20% for life, that might not be a bad deal, okay? But if you're doing both sides of the job, the sales and the operations, you should be getting paid. If you're an independent contractor, freight agent, you should be getting paid at least 50% of that. If you're doing one side of that, you should probably be getting paid half, right? So I hope that helps. Renee, why does onboarding with a shipper take so long? Some fast, some with 1 million insurance things they need. Well, here's what you're typically going to find. The larger the customer, right? The larger the business, the more complex and the more hoops you have to jump through and the more check boxes you have to check. Bigger companies have more bureaucracy and more boxes to check. Smaller companies have less bureaucracy and less boxes to check. I can tell you, as a freight broker startup, you should not focus on Fortune 1000 brands. You shouldn't be focusing on multi-billion-dollar companies. Even though there's a lot of volume there, the reality is you're not prepared to navigate those hurdles, and it's way more competitive. So you should focus on small to medium-sized shippers, companies that are doing maybe 5 million, maybe up to 500 million. I say the sweet spot is more 5 million up to maybe 100 million. That's kind of a really good sweet spot for small businesses. Now, I know you might not think that 100 million is a small business, but in reality it is. Okay, 100 million is not a big business, right? You're not really considered a large company until you're doing $1 billion plus, right? So I think 5 million up to 100 million. So that's what you're going to notice. And then even some of those smaller companies are going to create bureaucracy and complexity. A lot of that will come down to what their real need is. Do they have need? The more need they have, the more need you're able to identify, the more pain you're able to identify, then they can shorten that onboarding process, right? But as a general rule, smaller companies are better and quicker at onboarding than larger companies. So I hope that helps. Andy says, I'm bringing in about 40K each month, but I also want to start my own freight brokerage. Is it worth me leaving where I am currently to start my own? Very hard for me to answer that question. I don't know you personally. I don't know your overhead. I don't know your risk tolerance. When you say 40K, I don't know if you mean gross sales or if you mean profit. Or you mean commissions. I don't know what you really mean. So it's very hard for me to answer that question without having some additional context. You have to kind of measure your risk, but if you're good at the freight broker sales side and you're good at getting customers and getting shippers, that's the hardest part about becoming a successful freight broker and building a seven-figure freight brokerage, a six-figure income. Listen, it's easy to learn how to use load boards. It's easy to learn how to rate shipments. It's easy to learn how to dispatch and all the best practices around that. It's easy to learn how to do billing. All that stuff is pretty easy and intuitive. The hardest part about building a real business is getting customers, how to get shippers as a freight broker or freight agent. And that's where the sales comes in. So if you're good at that, you've got a huge leg up on most people, because the other side, you can typically either learn quickly or hire somebody to do that for you. So starting your freight brokerage, might make sense. Or maybe it just makes sense to become a 1099 freight agent where you're doing both sides of the equation. I don't know, again, what your situation is because you said you're only getting paid 20%. So I'm going to assume that you're only doing the sales side. But again, fill in the blanks. I'll try to do a follow-up if I can. Okay. Carl asks, how do I find brokers that don't mind onboarding new inexperienced agents? Okay, so here's my number one tip. Stop focusing on the large freight brokers with agent programs. Okay? If you focus on the large companies like my old company, Logistic Dynamics, or you focus on, other large companies that have established brokerages that have been around and are doing 50, 100, 200, $300 million in sales or more, okay? They've been around for a decade or 20 years, right? Like my brokerage has been around for over 20 years that I sold. They're going to be much harder typically to become an agent that's inexperienced with no book of business. But if you focus on smaller brokerages, maybe a brokerage has been in business for a year or two or three that's looking to grow and has an agent program, right? Sure, they'd love to get an agent with a book of business, but if you have no experience and you can show them the freight niche that you're going to go after, you can show them you went through this training, you can show them that you've got a little bit of capital behind you in order to, weather the early storm, the first few months of slow cash flow. If you can sell yourself to them, right, you're going to get an opportunity. Here's the reality. If you reach out to 50 brokers that have agent programs that are small agent programs, right? Maybe they've had their business 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and they're really looking to grow. And you pitch yourself to them and you can't get an agent position, you're better off not becoming an agent. Okay? Because if you can't do that on a straight commission basis, you're not going to get shippers. Okay? You're going to struggle on the shipper side because selling yourself as an independent agent straight commission to a broker that has an agent program, if you can't sell yourself to that, then getting shippers is going to be a struggle for you. And so I would suggest focusing on those small brokerages, the smaller ones. I would make sure you have a really good LinkedIn profile because they're going to do some vetting on you there, and make sure you've got that profile optimized, right? So to make you look professional. So those are a few tips, right? I do have a training. If you go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/blog, and then you type in the search bar there under the blog, get hired or freight agent, you'll see an entire training that I did on the blog, including a video training that walks you through step by step on how to get hired as a freight agent with no experience. So that would be another great resource for you. Hope that helps, Carl. Still looking. Hold on. Gotcha. Okay, Andy. So you're just doing the sales side. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to hire. If you're only doing 40,000 a month, it's pretty easy to cover those loads. And now I'm assuming that's gross, not profit. If it's profit, then obviously then you're going to need more than one operations person. But to hire one operations person isn't that much. Or for you to learn operations and become an agent, an independent agent where you're doing both sides, probably wouldn't be that difficult. But maybe you just want to focus on the sales side. I mean, I'm not telling you to leave. You asked me, does it make sense? I don't know if it makes sense. For me, I would make the migration, right? But for you, it might not make sense. Carl, how would you start a cold call with a new client? Well, here's one thing I wouldn't do. I wouldn't use those 3 scripts that I talked about. What I would do is before I started doing outreach to that prospect, I would do some research and gather some sales intelligence. I'd look at their website. I understand what product they make and ship. I'd look at some recent news about the company and see what's going on inside the company. I'd do a quick search on industry search on what industry are they in, the produce industry, the steel industry, oil and gas. I would look at their LinkedIn profile and I would take about, a few minutes, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, do a little bit of research on that. And I would make notes on some of the key elements. And then I would compose a compelling sales hook that was relevant, contextual, and differentiated me from the prospect. Perfect example. Let's say, for example, you're calling a prospect at ABC Widgets and you saw a press release where they had acquired another company in their industry, one of their competitors, right? They acquired one of their competitors a few months ago, and you saw a big press release about it, and it's being talked about online. And then, so what I would do is I would use that sales intelligence to differentiate myself. I might call them up and reference the fact that congratulations, I see that you guys acquired XYZ widget company. I had a question, or I specialize in helping companies in the widget industry. And I know that during a merger or a transaction that there's usually a lot of logistics challenges. And then I'd ask them a question, what type of challenges are you having or do you anticipate that are going to be associated with this merger? So do you see how I'm speaking? I mean, I just took that off the top of the cuff, right? But that's an example of using some data, using some sales intelligence that is very relevant and speaks directly to your prospects, so that shows you're educated. It helps to build rapport because you're talking about those challenges. You're asking a question that's super relevant to them because they know there's going to be issues. Whenever you merge two companies together, logistics is one of the things that always breaks. It's one of the areas they're most concerned about breaking, which is the delivery component, right? The logistics of their supply chain for making the product and then distributing the product. That is something in there always breaks, right? So they're anticipating these issues. And if you can be there and be that person that offers them the solution and positioned yourself as a little bit of an expert around those issues, well, all of a sudden, you sound very different than everybody else. That's just one example, but that's the framework. Gather sales intelligence and create a compelling sales story. That's a big, 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 big part of what I teach in the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator coaching program. That's the reason why I'm beating you over the head with getting on the wait list, because I know that most of you are going to struggle in these cold calls. Most of you are going to struggle in how to differentiate yourself. Most of you are going to struggle in getting your first 5 or 10 shippers and moving towards hitting that first 7 figures in sales. And that's why I put this program together. So if you get on the wait list, you'll get notified when spots open up. So I hope that helps. Let me scroll through here. All right. So Danielle asks, how do you pivot when you found a pain point within the shipper, but they won't take the time to get on a scheduled call to explore how I can improve their logistics operations? Okay. So here's the thing. If they're not willing to schedule a call, there's only a couple of reasons why. Number one, the pain is not enough, or they don't trust you. What I would suggest, if you believe you've identified a pain point that they've confirmed with you, but they're not willing to schedule, a follow-up call or have a discussion about it, the problem is not the pain point. The problem is trust. You need to build trust. So my immediate reaction is, I'm going to build trust. So what can you do to build trust? That's where you use social proof, testimonials, case studies, things that show and that other people are saying that you're an expert in your field. There's an old saying, right? One of my early mentors, Jeffrey Gitomer, when you say it about yourself, it's bragging, but when someone else says it about you, it's proof, right? So I would use social proof. I would use case studies, testimonials, stories about how you were able to overcome that type of pain point, stories and testimonials about how you were able to, handle and address these different clients' issues and challenges, and that they trust you, and that trust will carry over. And then that trust is the foundation of what you need in order to get them on a phone call or to have a real discussion with you about what's going on in their part. In most cases, if you're struggling with getting people to engage with you, it's almost always trust. It's almost always trust. It's not price. Okay. Because even in this case, you probably haven't even gotten to the price part, right? You're trying to get to that point. But in most cases, you're going to find it's not price, it's trust, right? So you need to focus on getting them to trust you. Social proof is one of the best ways to do it. When you go to Amazon and you buy something, you look at how many reviews they got. It's the same thing here, just a little bit different format. If you were a broker, and I was a broker and we both said the exact same thing and I provided social proof and you didn't, statistically speaking, I'm going to build more trust and get the sale before you will. Okay? So I hope that helps. Okay, Anisha says, before calling the company, what research should I do to prepare and how can I make sure I reach the right person? Well, if you want to reach the right person, then you're going to use tools like Apollo or Zoom Info or different database tools that you can use to identify decision makers and people in different roles. Shipping managers, logistics managers, warehouse managers are typically some of the three of the most common. So you're going to use those types of tools to make sure you're looking for the right person. You can also use LinkedIn, searching by the company name, and then you can find the shipping manager, logistics manager, whatever, warehouse manager, right? So those are some of the tools you can use to talk to the right person. The research you're going to want to do just at a basic level, you're going to want to look at the company's website and understand the type of products that they make and produce. You're going to want to look at maybe some of the news or press releases on the website so you understand a little bit about that. You're going to look at the LinkedIn profile, right? You're going to want to look at the individual's LinkedIn profile and learn a little bit about them and gather some sales intelligence. And you might want to do a quick Google search on the company and or the industry to find some recent, relevant, current topics or news that you could use as a part of your conversation. So those are just the basic fundamentals. Do a Google search, look at their website, and look at their LinkedIn profile. So those are some of the things. It might take you 5 minutes when you first get started to research each lead, but after a little while, it's only going to take you 2 or 3 minutes to hit those, jot down some notes, create a compelling sales hook, and have some talking points that are super relevant and contextual to you or to them that differentiate you from the crowd. Okay. So you are not going to be able to use this type of strategy to make 150 or 200 calls a day, but I'm more focused on quality over quantity. Yes, you need to be doing at least 40, 50, 60 calls a day, but you don't need to be doing 100 or 150. I would focus on gathering that sales intelligence, really educating myself about the prospect, and then doing 50 or 60 calls a day, really good, solid outreach a day versus doing 100 or 200 generic pitches. Okay. I think you're going to get a lot further faster. You're not going to burn out nearly as much, nearly as quickly. And I think you'll enjoy the job more and you'll get better results. Hope that helps. What time is it? Oh God. All right. So we got to wrap this up here. Give me 1 second. Yeah. All right, guys, listen, that's going to wrap it up for today. If I didn't get to your question, I apologize. Come back next week, or maybe I'll try to come into the comments later and reply, through comments. But listen, I really appreciate you guys being here. If you guys found value, if you learned anything, if you picked up one nugget during this training, do me a favor. If you're on LinkedIn, hit the like button and hit repost this to your feed. If you're on YouTube, hit the like button, comment below. If you're anywhere else, truly appreciate it. Just hit the like button. Make sure you set a reminder on your phone or your computer or somewhere that I do these lives every Monday at noon. And I almost always include a Q&A at the end like I did today. Make sure you hit that like button. Truly appreciate you being here. And if you're struggling with sales, if you're struggling to get shippers, you're struggling to start making any money, and you've already got the foundation and you already went through the Freight Broker startup stuff, go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist, and you'll get notified when spots open up. And who knows, maybe we might get a chance to work together in the near future. Have an awesome day. Have an awesome week. And I'll see you next week on the next Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. Thanks all. Appreciate it.